Pitch-a-Palooza is a quarterly, trimesterly opportunity. It's a chance for our internal employees to get in front of the entire company and pitch their wild and absurd product ideas or content ideas. And we've seen everything from somebody's pitch prescription to a new model. We've seen people pitch new verticals. We've seen things like action figures and chores. And it's truly unbelievable to see just the range of ideas that come out of it. It really becomes like performance art, like seeing people get into it. And like, it's inclusive, right? You're allowing people to come into the process that in a lot of other places, people keep pretty close to the chest, really allowing the amazing creative people that we have here get up there and showcase their abilities, as well as just bring in new and wild ideas that you would never come up with otherwise, because there's an entirely different perspective that you never thought of.
Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast with Stephen Leese and Sean Tinney. This podcast is a behind-the-shades look at creating and changing culture inside of Goodr sunglasses. You can live with the status quo, you can challenge the status quo, or you can do what we do at Goodr and status the quo challenge.
Yo, you're listening to a 6-part series where I interview each of our department heads. At Goodr, we call our department heads Flockstars. Enjoy. We have a very special guest with us today, my good friend, colleague, and all things Minnesota mentor, Mike Eddy. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, going great. Happy to be here.
Mike is our Flockstar of our creative herd. To the outside world, he's known as the creative director. So before we get into Mike's role and team details, Mike, tell us a story about you growing up that led to the person you are today.
Well, first, we got some business to cover here. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we got to address the man bun. I feel like we need a moment of silence for the fallen man bun here, because this is big time. So, I mean, I think we need to look at each other for at least 3 seconds.
Dead in the eye?
Dead in the eye. Glorious.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So,
Thanks for not letting me just blow through that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. We need to honor it. So a story about myself growing up, the person I am. It's got to be about my time in jazz band, 7th grade.
All right.
This is a train wreck. So 6th grade, I started a band with my friends. And so I picked up the electric bass like one does. So this is like right in the era of pop punk. So like Good Charlotte, Blink-182, like I'm killing it. So Winona was a small town. Word gets out, and I get to 7th grade, and one of my friends comes up to me who's in jazz band, and he's like, "Hey, like our bassist for jazz band graduated. We're looking for a new one. Are you interested?" And at that point, I can play like 3 songs, like 1 Good Charlotte, 2 Blink-182, and I'm like, I'm a god, like I got this. Like I'm like, absolutely, I'm in. Like, mind you, I have no idea how to read music. I can't read music. Like, I have no idea. I know, like, every good boy does fine and, like, bass or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to make this work. Like, no big deal. Like, get into the first day of rehearsal, and it becomes incredibly apparent right away that I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, no clue. And so, fortunately, there was, like, an upright bassist who was there. So, like, there was bass coming out of the section. But to mask this, I just turned my bass down all the way. And for literally like a full-on month, I danced. I just pretended I had a whole act going for a full month. And then we get to the first show, and I've been masking this. Nobody knows. They put me in the front row to the right a little bit on a stool, so like I'm on display. And I mean, I'm terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't read music. And it's like family. It's like the whole school. Curtains open, and I dance. I just put my act on. I am lying to everybody. This goes on for 3 months. I play like 5 shows, and like any con man, in my gut, I'm like, man, this can't go on forever. And it doesn't. So we were at one rehearsal. It was a super early morning rehearsal for whatever reason. And we're going over it. And obviously, like, the crowd hasn't showed up yet. So we're doing the rehearsal super early. I'm out of it. And so I get in my seat, and we're doing the rehearsal. And like, my normal routine is to turn my bass all the way down. I somehow fucked up and turned it all the way up. And so the conductor goes like, all right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. And I do my dance, right? I'm playing. I think I got it. Like, I'm putting on a good show. Immediately, the conductor, like, bless his heart, he's like, everybody stop. What is going on here? And he looks at me, he's like, Mike, why don't you take this from the top? And I just have to look at him. I'm like, and the whole band's looking at me. Everybody's looking at me, and they're like, and I'm like, I got to be honest, I have no idea what's going on here. And so this is going on. And he's like, the look on his face was shocked, because we're going, like, we have a live show in 20 minutes. Like, and he's like, all right, so just this song. And I'm like, no, in general, like, just
this was your time to come clean.
Yes. And I was like, And that ended my jazz band career. So I still don't know how to read music. But key learning there was show up prepared, which is a core part of a core tenet of mine. And then know your limits. The fake it till you make it bullshit. Like that did not work out here. I thought I was going to figure it out, but I never want to feel that. Having like 40 kids looking back at you in pure shock is devastating.
That story is incredible.
Yeah.
What was the name of your like punk band that you had?
Oh man, Elsewhere 17. I don't like. Nobody knows why. I think it was because like when we turned 17, we would go elsewhere, but like also we're not even adults then, so like it was painful, but it was good times.
That was gold.
Yeah.
So to tell our listeners about your role, your department, lame title, fun title, all the stuff.
Yeah. So I head up the creative team here. Lame title is, I don't know, head of creative. Fun title is scheming demon.
Yeah.
That's all. I actually got to think about redoing that because it's been a while. But I'm always scheming, and I've been known to be a little bit of a demon when it comes to moving launch stuff around. So it still works.
Yeah.
So the creative herd is comprised of 4 flocks or 4 teams. You have, I'm going to go fun names first, the names, but you have the doodle division, which is design.
Yeah.
You got the copy coven, which is copy. You have the Department of Dreams, which is photo, video, film. And then as of recent, we have added the Illuminati, which heads our product direction and our product management for our key categories, which is inline, limited, and licensing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So your herd, your department as a whole, what's y'all's focus for 2023?
Yep. The big thing revolves around storytelling and becoming masters of that. I think with the primary focus being around more agility and being quicker, because I think just as you see the world, as the world is now ingesting content and taking in content, being able to create more content quicker is paramount to your success as a brand.
Yeah.
And we have some amazing people here, some very creative people. And so being able to capitalize on that quickly and efficiently is huge and a major focus for us.
Yeah, for sure. How many people are in the creative herd? Do you know?
22 total.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, we produce the vast majority of our content in-house. We obviously use some outside help at times, but it's quite a lot. So all the cool stuff you see is coming from us mostly. Yep. What is your day-to-day like?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, at a high level, there's a lot of feedback, a lot of reviews, a lot of guidance and direction. So kind of a mix of, I think, I'm sure on this podcast, right? I mean, I know on this podcast, you've talked about the Tuesday, Thursday meetings, right? So getting into the weeds on Tuesday, Thursday. So design review, looking at product concepts coming in, looking at design, aesthetics, content reviews, looking at what we're putting out from a video and film perspective, copy reviews, weeklies, one-on-one, and then really using the Monday, Wednesday, Friday free time to kind of zoom out and look at the overarching picture, like what direction can I provide to the team? How can I make sure that we are living into our values, we are providing the direction and just executing against our goals and targets?
How many days a month are we like shooting content, like photo shoots, video shoots, off the top of your head?
Ooh, great question. We do roughly like 59 total shoots a year, so at least one a week, right? And then obviously that averages out to more than once a week, but some weeks it's 1, other weeks it's 2, and there's a varying level of degree of what a shoot means, right? There's tabletop, there's Hollywood style, but for the most part, it's at least once a week.
How often are you on set?
Barely ever, to be quite honest. I think instilling a lot of trust in Barrett and our content team to execute on. I mean, I definitely provide insight around like direction, but I mean, to be quite honest, I don't know what I would do on set. Like, I don't know how to. I don't know how to direct.
You
like,
sit and
I would just get in the way. Yeah. So bring my chair and just set up, and
you'd plug in your bass. You would turn it down, and you would just dance.
That's what I do. That's kind of my job here, actually.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do.
You're outed.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part about your role, and what's the funnest part about your role?
Hardest, oh man. Well, the obvious, like the continual hard feedback and some of the tougher decisions around direction are. There's a lot of weight around that, and that's obviously difficult. I think from a personal standpoint, it really around keeping my head above water. And what I mean by that is like we do a lot of really fun and a lot of really cool things, and I really want to dive in and engage with that and have fun and sort of make those things happen, but realizing like I don't have the time. Yeah. Also, I just would get in people's way. It's funny, Duncan, who you can't see here on the camera, like later this week, we're doing a photo shoot with Georgia Aquarium.
Yeah.
We're doing it in March, and I kind of approach him like, hey, I really want to go on this shoot because we're doing this like Shark Tank dive. We're putting somebody in the Shark Tank, And it became very apparent quickly that like they had a plan and a process. And I was just like, hey, I want to go. And I was like, actually, A, I can't go. And B, I think I'm just getting in the way of this process. So like, there's a level of like, hey, I need to step back and provide direction and support. But like, you know, obviously I pick my battles when it comes to certain projects, but just maintaining that head above water is big. Because as soon as I get submerged and overwhelmed, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a delicate balance here because we do such fun, wild shit. And you and I have been here since the beginning, and you know, we've been able to do some crazy stuff. And then you realize, well, as a leader, I really want to do that stupid ass project, but
Really do.
I really want
to die. I really want to get in that Shark Tank.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal discipline there.
Yeah, for sure.
We started working together in 2012 at Easton Sports.
Yep.
And then I left in 2014. When did you leave?
15?
15?
15.
And then you went and worked at AT&T before coming back here and being employee number one.
Yep.
So, you know, what did you learn from your experience, you know, at AT&T that benefited you here at goodr?
Yeah. Oh man, it's interesting. I mean, you know, what's fascinating is like, I certainly worked with a lot of incredibly bright, smart people there. I mean, it was in New York. It was in 30 Rock. There was like the sexiness to it.
For sure.
But then you get into the subject matter of what you're working on. And it was content strategy for internet, and it is soul crushing. You're like, what am I doing here? We would get on calls, and there would be like 30 people who have the same job title and role as you do, and you'd have like existential crisis around like, who am I? Like, what am I doing here? And so like that was soul crushing. But then, you know, that being said, what I did learn there is the importance of fine tuning the details, because AT&T is, I don't know, Fortune 10, Fortune 5 company.
Yeah.
It's massive. So when you talk about building a plan or building a strategy, a simple mistake, you're not dealing with just 10 people or 100 people. It's hundreds of thousands to millions, right?
Yeah.
So like making sure that your strategy is airtight, and a lot of times we were targeting it down to the zip code. So ensuring that what you're saying to the customers at the right time is huge. And I think that is something I've taken with me for, you know, to today, I guess.
Yeah.
Forever.
No,
Yeah.
that's interesting. You were there for a couple years. Mike also just did work for me for free for the first few years of goodr on the side. I always joke that I used up every favor I had starting goodr.
I always love how you like have to throw in the for free
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Like, I really could have used that money. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
saw my apartment.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you saw my, I mean,
That's
I could
fair.
have used
You
that.
could use
I
that
like how
money.
you remind me like I forgot. Like,
No,
I remember. I was there. Thanks.
What was it like, you know, when I called you, I think it was like March of 2017, and asking you to be employee number one?
Yeah. Man, revisionist history there. I definitely was like, hey, I can't keep working for free. And then you came back with, yeah. So it was shocking. I mean, it was a mix of like uncertainty and incredible excitement. Right?
Yeah.
Like I loved working with you, Carrie, Ben, like solving those problems. It was incredibly rewarding and fulfilling and challenging. That being said, like I would be lying if I said I knew it was going to work out.
Yeah.
Right? There was still, I mean, there was Gear of the Year, and we'd made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
And you had made a lot of progress, but there was still a lot of uncertainty that was a little unsettling. But fortunately enough, like, you know, talking with you about it, talking with family members, I was in a position to take that risk. And I don't know, it was exciting. It was like totally a new chapter. And like I said, I was in a soul crushing job, you know, peddling internet to people in Dallas, Texas. Like this was great.
Yeah.
So,
I remember you telling me a story about you talking to your parents about it, and you know, your dad giving you information, like actually being really in
Right.
support of this. What was that conversation like? Remind me.
yeah. That was shocking, to be
Yeah,
quite
I
honest.
remember
'Cause, like,
that.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't really sure because, you know, you're leaving the steady job with, you know, solid pay and things were great. But, you know, fortunately, like he had made a similar decision, which is actually fascinating, is he actually left. He used to work for Southwestern Bell, which was AT&T.
Yo.
And then, so the similarity is actually kind of wild.
Yeah.
But he actually left when they got bought and acquired and moved to Winona to, you know, start another company. So
Yeah.
like the similarities were there, which I didn't really put together until he gave that feedback. And it was inspiring, right? Like, cause you know, like you want to imagine that like you're an independent adult and you don't need your parents' permission to do anything, but like there is importance there. And so to receive that feedback and support made a huge difference and ultimately led to where I am now.
Well, and the idea that you thought that they were going to zig and they zagged, right? Being like,
right.
they're like, no, stay at the steady pay job. They're like, no, you should try.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty jarring.
Oh, that's cool. To tell our listeners about Pitch-a-Palooza and why it's so important to the brand.
Oh yeah, love Pitch-a-Palooza. So Pitch-a-Palooza is a quarterly, trimesterly opportunity. It's a chance for our internal employees to get in front of the entire company and pitch their wild and absurd product ideas or content ideas. And we've seen everything from somebody's pitch prescription to a new model. We've seen people pitch new verticals. We've seen things like action figures and chores. And it's truly unbelievable to see just the range of ideas that come out of it. And we talked about this, but one of my favorite parts is it really becomes like performance art, like seeing people get into it. And like we've had like Kelly made like 4-minute video on ridiculous things. We've seen people like getting costumes. We've seen Will, who did a DJ presentation to pitch Rave Gooder. And I think for me, like looking at it, what's really cool about it is it's inclusive, right? You're allowing people to come into the process that in a lot of other places people keep pretty close to the chest and precious, right? When you talk about product and creative, but really allowing the amazing creative people that we have here get up there and showcase their abilities, as well as just, bring in new and wild ideas that you would never come up with otherwise, because there's an entirely different perspective that you never thought of. So it's really fun and really leans into that fun pillar of ours that I love. So.
Yeah, I do agree with. You see the side come out of people sometimes. Right. It's wild. I know Hannah at her Goodr Stock presentation, one of her moon moments was a Pitch-a-Palooza. It's a thing that people here like love doing, and since that room is full of joy when it's going on.
Oh, it's hilarious. I mean, the pitches coming out of there, and and then it just provides a nice, chest of ideas and just backlog and pipeline of amazing opportunities to create fun and connection.
Do you have any sense of how many Pitch-a-Paloozas we've done? How many people have pitched?
Oh, I wish I did. I don't.
It's been going on for years now.
I mean, it's been going on. I mean, we've at least done like 20, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I mean, not all pitches get selected, but we've certainly used a majority of the launches just come from this, to be honest. So I don't have exact numbers, but find out.
It's all good. So you're really good at making maps, like taking ideas into execution. What's your secret? And maybe kind of talk about even like kind of the whole new box proposal, because that's a really, I think, a grounding example.
Yeah. Well, I think to start, I'm fortunate enough to have been here for a while, so I have seen the company grow, and I kind of have a better understanding of how the company functions for now, how the company operates for now. So I think that eliminates a large barrier for a lot of people, right? Because when you start making a map, you kind of get stopped dead in your tracks.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where to go first, and so that's a huge advantage. I also just as a 5, love getting into the weeds on projects like this, making things come together and making things work. And then secondly, aside from all that, I think one thing that I try to do is take full ownership of the project, which I think is really important in this situation. Yeah. And part of that is accepting and addressing the failure ahead of time and letting people know that when the failure comes, and if it comes, you're going to be dialed. You have a plan and process, but understanding that, you wear the brunt of that, and understanding and giving people permission to fail in that process, but understanding that responsibility is on you to lead that. And I really take pride in that. And I think it's important anytime you make a map to take ownership and lead people through that, because if you're uncertain about something and you're not confident in the direction, it kind of derails the entire process. So
do you think that one of the reasons people maybe might struggle to go on and do the full work to take an idea from execution and to make a map is because is it a defense mechanism? Is it something? What do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I don't know. I do think there is some fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
In a defense mechanism way, right? Because ultimately, when you change a process that has inherently worked for a long time, it's jarring, and the fear of taking something that works and changing it to something that doesn't work is terrifying, right? And so I think that prohibits a lot of people from taking that final step. And so I do think there is a layer of it that is maybe a defense mechanism, but and I think it just comes with getting comfortable with understanding hey, this may fail. And I have led many a failed project.
Yeah.
Many a failed project. So I think that's just sort of like getting your reps in and understanding you'll learn from that. But I do think there's something to that for sure.
I also think people just they need to be shown how, actually, because it is, it is a fun, electrifying thing. It's also a lot of work to actually show people how. Maybe kind of talk about like the new box proposal project, because I think that's a really good example.
For sure. Yeah, and I think what's interesting to preface this is Aaron and Marissa have done 99.9 of this. So but yeah, what started is, so weekly we do a design review of which you're a part of. And prior to one meeting, I went up to Aaron, who heads up our Doodle division, our design team, and just sort of asked like, hey, what are we going through today? Like, what's the process? And he talked me through a bunch of things. And he says, well, then at the end, we're going to show a new box sample. And I said, interesting. Like, are you talking through the context? Are you talking through this? And he goes, no, we're just going to show the new box concept. And I'm like, I'm going to do you a favor. cut this from the presentation today. And here's what I want you to do, because Steven's going to come at you hard on this.
Yeah, you don't come correct.
Yeah, if you're not coming to correct. So here's what I want you to do. Take it back, you and Marissa, put together the why, right? Put together the how, put together the context of the situation. Like, what is the impact from even a cost perspective? Why are we doing this? One of the major reasons is the environmental impact in a positive way that this has.
Yeah.
But doing that and giving you that context invites you into the project, right? And it's really important. That's the feedback I gave him. I was like, you need to bring him in. When you just show him something without the context, you are instantly going to get defensive. And not like in a negative way, but you're going to ask those hard questions. Right.
Yeah.
But if you bring him into the why and you understand it, I think that entirely changes the conversation, which it did.
Yeah.
Instead of you coming in with really hard feedback and asking, why are we doing this? What, like, our packaging is fine. I don't understand what the problem is. You are like, well, this is sweet. I love it. It changes the entire dynamic and shifts the conversation, which I think is really important. And I think just always giving context to individuals ahead of time is something that I try to strive for. Because again, it brings people in, it eliminates those questions down the line that eventually just make things more convoluted. So that was the feedback I gave, and they did amazing. They crushed it. It's amazing.
It was incredible, and even them showing up with like a sample of what it might look like. I'm a very like a visual, contextual person, and so I was able to hold that box and be like, oh, this is great. I mean, for all the reasons. And what was occurring to me while you were talking was, I think that a lot of the one reason that people might struggle to like do all the work you just talked about is sometimes you do that work and the answer is a no.
True, for sure.
That's a tough place sometimes.
Yeah, that sucks.
What is something small and obscure you love about goodr?
The punctuality here. I love how we are on time, but like aggressively on time.
Yeah.
Like, I love being in a meeting, and if, let's say 2:30, someone shows up at 2:30, you are going to get roasted in that meeting.
Yeah.
People are going to look at you and be like, what the fuck's your problem? Why are you late? And like, sure, there's a little pettiness to it, but like, we've all worked at places where it's like normal to show up 2 to 5 minutes late, and it's infuriating. Because like, I do believe that, I mean, time is our most valuable asset. And by you even showing 2 to 5 minutes late, you don't respect that. And it also throws off the entire flow of the meeting. So I love just how we've kind of created this like self-policing culture of like, oh, look who's showing up late today, even though it's it's on the dot, but like not really allowing for people to slide and show up late and holding people accountable to that. I love, because I think it's really important.
I think another really important thing for me about I love the punctuality too.
Yeah.
Is if you know being on time is important, and you know there's a room full of people waiting for you, and you still are late, or it's okay to be late, but if you're late and you're not self-aware, if you don't walk in and be like, I'm really sorry, like, hey, this is the stuff I'm seeing. What am I not seeing?
Right. For sure. For sure.
It scares me to death.
We have a base agreement to be here at 2:30. Like, I don't know why. Like, we agreed on this. You accepted.
This is the Culture Goodr podcast. In the context of the workplace, what does culture mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about culture, I really think of it like the foundation, the DNA of a brand, right? I think it's really easy to think about the culture workplace, and the word workplace, right? You instantly kind of put it, anything inside the wall.
Yeah.
So it's like the ping pong table, or it's like the lunch being served. But I think one thing we do really well here is that our values and our culture is intertwined and weaved into everything that we do, right?
Yeah.
And talking about it specifically to creative, when we approach things that we do, is this living into our values? Are we speaking to being unabashedly yourself, right? It's not just something different about achieving business goals. It's being focused on our values and our principles. So it's really about, having that intertwine and that DNA, and again, that strong foundation to build off of, that I think is huge for culture and something we focus on.
So what are the 3 common characteristics you think of the people who thrive here at goodr?
Ooh, 3.
3.
Okay.
You get 3.
All right. Well, easy one. Creative. I think everybody here is creative, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Even if you're doing, I don't know, finance or accounting, like there's a lot of creativity involved in that. So I think that's really important. Let's see. Driven goes without saying, but I think you have to have drive. And then the last one is the most important. I think it encompasses everything. Is just you have to be able to strive in an autonomous environment, right? So how you're able to take that autonomy that is given, because we give people a lot of latitude here to see projects, to find problems, to present solutions, and make something happen. So for a lot of people, that is a daunting experience to not have a direct roadmap on how to make something happen. But if you can come into, goodr or in this environment and take projects from start to finish and thrive in an autonomous nature, I think that's a huge characteristic that will ultimately lead to your success here.
Yeah, for sure. And I love your, lead the creative heart and creatives on there.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Context,
That makes sense. I agree that I think sometimes people they say things like, "Oh, I'm not creative," and they associate like painting or design with creativity. But man, the most creative people here actually, I think, are the most dialed and organized, and it allows them to be super creative.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very real. We value feedback here at goodr.
Oh, yeah.
Give me some feedback with something I can be doing better.
Okay. Well, I'll give you 2. And then you can edit it out. So I'm going to soften you up with a compliment.
All right.
And then so you're softened up, so when I strike you down, it's not as hard.
Great.
So I think you have an innate ability and you're incredibly gifted at solving problems and solving problems really quickly. I think you can see a problem at the beginning and you'd see it through the end in real time. I think the feedback in this situation is, I think when you're talking to especially Flock leaders, I think before you jump into the solution you see, leading with curiosity, right? Asking questions around, hey, what work have you done on this problem that I'm seeing? What are some of the solutions you've came up with? And then in that moment, I think you can get feedback on, but in that situation, I think you instill more confidence versus the, alternative, which is more dependence on you, right?
Sure.
And I think that's a powerful thing of kind of like giving the pin back, which is major.
No, I agree. When we were all working yesterday on things we can level up as leaders, and one of mine was patience, which I think is directly related to what you're saying. Is just I need to have more patience with people and like lead with that curiosity instead of just like
for sure.
Yeah.
And the second one.
Yeah, it's here.
I mean, you're a super laid back, chill guy. What I love about these podcasts is they're really direct. I loosen up, get conversational. I want to it's tough. Like I know there's obviously a script and things like that, but I think there's an element of just creating more conversational elements to this and loosening up and inviting people in that way. Because I know you show up prepared and dialed for everything, but maybe embracing some of the uncertainty and the uncomfortableness and letting that shine, because I do think it creates a little bit more of an inviting atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone. Yesterday during our podcast meeting, that was for sure feedback from, I think, a couple of different people, which is very real. It almost feels like, I was actually thinking about this today as we were setting up here. We're kind of upright right now.
Right.
When we're going to make a podcast, we're like, do we make it more of a couch? Do we make it more of a lounge vibe for that?
That's what I thought it was. I mean, I have terrible posture in a chair. So I'm gonna look like trash on this. But a couch, slink back. Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be really cool. And I think that's definitely a step in the right direction.
No, point taken. It's something that you are not the first one in the past week to say.
Oh, wow, you're getting bombarded.
Well, yeah. Because all the people have to listen to the podcast to do the work beforehand. They're like, all right, we gotta help this flow out.
Yeah, okay, fair.
We're all trying to get better. Me included. You love music, obviously. You love faking. You love music. What's something about creating music that has made you a better leader?
Yeah. Man, that I really didn't set myself up for success
here.
With just the faking. I definitely think patience and perseverance. Not to just draft off you talking about patience, but there are certain times where I will pick up my guitar, and for whatever reason, the cosmic forces that have led me to that moment are just aligned, and I can't miss. I feel like I feel like I thought I looked when I turned my bass all the way down. Like I'm actually executing on this, right? And so, there's that. And then there are days that are the exact opposite, where I'll pick this thing up and my hands turn to like bratwurst. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like upside down. But what I feel like over time, what I've learned is, I've learned to appreciate those moments, the latter moments, right? The frustrating moments, because it really is part of the whole process. And you learn a lot in those moments of like, how can you persevere through this? And from a leadership perspective, I think that's really important, right? There's a process. Like not everything is going to be sunshine, daisies, and roses, right? Like accepting that there's a lot of work and there's a process to this that's important, and that's going to be tough, but that'll ultimately get you to a better moment and a better situation.
Yeah. Do you think process is really important, especially when you're struggling to be creative?
Yeah. I mean, I do. I think I think repetition and getting into the process and creating the conditions to consistently improve is important, if that makes sense. So I think that comes from process to, not force yourself to be creative, of course, but just to give yourself the space and process to get into being creative, even if you don't feel it, because eventually you work yourself out of it. And I do believe you emerge on the other side better at the end of the day. I mean, to draft off this, I was watching this TikTok, because that's, of course, how I get all my information these days. But there's this guy who was talking about how he was listening to Bob Dylan's entire anthology from start to finish, which is a feat, because he has a ton of music, a lot. But he talked about this thing, which I thought was fascinating. He's like, on one album, which was probably lesser known, you could hear him try something and it sounded terrible and it didn't work. But then what he said was interesting is like 2 or 3 albums later, you'd hear him try it again, but it would be elevated and evolved and it would be perfect. Right. And I think there's a similarity there. I'm not comparing myself to Bob Dylan, but there's like a similarity there, and something that I think about when like here at goodr, like even from a creative standpoint, if you remember, some of the first prints we did on our sunglasses were garbage. Yeah, they were. Like they were bad. But eventually we didn't give up on it. We iterated, and I'll remember the moment with the comic book pair. You remember picking those up and being like, oh my God, like shocked at what we were able to get to versus where we were. And I think there's just that nature of accepting that something may not be working right at the moment, but understanding that there's a kernel of something there to continuously iterate on is going to ultimately land on something impactful. And the comic book pair is a great example, because that thing came out wild.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, we've, one of our, kind of side rules we play by is always done is better than perfect.
Right.
We're kind of teaching that, like, hey, let's rapidly do it. But as we get bigger, you've actually commented more recently on like, hey, done is better than perfect. Also, don't be sloppy.
Yeah.
Maybe speak to that and like kind of what you've seen that you want to be mindful that we don't just get lazy in the interest of done is better than perfect.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is like what was done like 5 years ago is not acceptable today, right?
Yeah.
And what was perfect back then is maybe done now. So like the scales shift.
That's fair.
And I think like that's the important thing to remember. And so it's one of those things where there's moments where that makes sense, but there's obviously the John Wooden quote, like be quick, but don't hurry, of course, right? That we talk about. And maybe Kelly's talked about in her podcast, but from a creative standpoint, right? Like there are certain things that the standard has shifted, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? And being cognizant of that, if like the baseline of being done is not the same as it was 5 years ago. So, yeah, maybe I can start.
I think you're right. I mean, going back to the Bob Dylan analogy, Bob Dylan's not comparing himself to other people. Bob Dylan's comparing himself to Bob Dylan.
Right.
And so, he's trying to be better than himself. And you're right, like our scale does go up, but how do we make sure that we let everybody know our scale has moved?
For sure. And I think just over time, as we've gotten more successful, as we've done more absurd things, right? The consumer is expecting more, right? And so not resting on your laurels and continuously pushing that to a different level. There's an expectation there, both internally and externally, that is important. And the stakes change too, right?
They do.
We're now verified on Instagram big time. So we're a real company. So we got to be serious about this.
One thing I've been thinking about recently in the same vein is I've heard this, I don't know, joke or adage for a musician where, you have your entire life to make your first album, then you have 2 years to make your second album.
Yeah.
And the first albums are amazing. I think that's a lot of reason why you see kind of like a sophomore slump with musicians. And here at goodr, I've felt this to some degree at times where do these amazing things and projects and continually level up, but then it is impossible to keep outdoing yourself at some degree. I don't know if you felt this before where like I have given next level talks and sometimes I just give a good talk and I actually have to be like, oh man, it wasn't next level, but everything can't be next level.
Right. For sure. I think the best example of that is our holiday series line.
Yeah.
I feel like we ebb and flow with that thing. One year it just doesn't quite land. One year out of nowhere it crushes. But I think, and then the next year after, it's up and down all the time. But what I do love, and kind of back to the Bob Dylan thing, is like we do compare ourselves to ourselves, right? So we're not looking externally, and I think we always try to look at something and be like, how can we change this in a unique way so it's not just a slight iteration of what we knew was successful, And I think that's something I love here because we swing big, right? We play big, we take big swings. Sometimes you knock it out of the park, and sometimes you absolutely strike out. But I really compare that to the holiday series because I think there are ones that we've just knocked out, and some that just unfortunately don't land. I mean, 4th of July this year, not quite there. Yeah, unfortunately.
That's a good comparison because we do it every single year.
Every single year. So, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's garbage.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing here at goodr, what would it be?
Decks. Presentations. This is I feel like this is kind of spicy because we're a big presentation company. We've got we make a lot of slides and a lot of presentations, but I do want to create the conditions in certain meetings to kind of remove the expectation of a presentation because there's a lot of times where, I mean, even kind of going back to the feedback I was giving you about the rigidity of it, right? Like you'll be in a presentation and your eyes just go to what's on the deck and what's on the screen, and it becomes kind of formulaic and robotic. Whereas like an organic conversation, I think can lead you down something maybe more nuanced and direct and get to the crux of an issue versus just skimming through the surface. And this is really for like one-on-ones and maybe weekly meetings rather than being like top 3 wins of the week and my biggest, like those things are important in certain contexts, but I think to really get sometimes the core of issues, having a more organic, free-flowing conversation can be more beneficial.
Do you think it would be a thing where we would, I don't disagree actually. I've toyed with, sometimes we have for our listeners out there, we have a standard slide where you have like purpose, wild success, rules we play, bar deliverables, and those are important. But when people are talking, I would actually rather prefer some, like that is a thought exercise. Somebody coming like, all right, today we're talking about packaging.
Right.
And here's really what's going on. And there's almost, here's the better question. I think you need to force a certain amount of this behavior to instill the habit and to force people to think it through so they show up dialed.
Right.
Like how do we go like instilling that habit, but not having people handcuffed to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's definitely a practice, but I mean, I feel like we've done that to some extent, right? Like people know the NASA checks. I guess like Carl's blueprint is kind of a good example, right? Going from Carl's flight plan where like we had everything categorized, but but having that starting point is great because it forces habit and things to know. But then we got to Carl's blueprint where we cut 90% of the tasks out because people knew about it, right? So it's kind of like, how do you create a process that gets instilled in people so they know the flow and what to address?
It's almost like a varsity pen. It's like all right, once you do 100 like great decks, you get a varsity pen. Like, cool, you're good. We don't need to see your decks anymore.
Well, varsity jacket.
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 Put the pins on.
First, for sure.
How have you challenged the status quo lately?
I think just the projects we're doing with the Illuminati, I think there is a lot of challenging the status quo in that we're taking processes that we've used forever and just completely obliterating it. I mean, you saw the launch lockdown last week, which funny is like, it's probably the best one we've ever done.
Yeah.
And then we're about to blow it up in 2 weeks. So I think there's a lot of challenging the status quo there, as well as other projects that are encompassed in there that I think are ultimately very important to the next evolution and phase of the brand.
Yeah. What I was going to ask, like, tell me about a recent fuck up, but actually what I'd rather ask is our Flock Up of the Year award was your idea.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that and why you think it's so important.
Yeah. I mean, I talked kind of ad nauseum on this about failure because I do believe in it. Because I do believe like taking big swings is where you get big results, but ultimately not everything lands, right?
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing with the Flock Up of the award Flock Up of the Year award is just showcasing that it's tough because people don't want to win it, but like at the same time, like celebrating those failures, celebrating the risk, right? Like it's not like the award is necessarily the biggest failure, but it's to the person who took the biggest risk, and maybe it didn't turn out as you had anticipated, right? It's not like somebody left the door open and robbed all of our units, and it's like it's more something nuanced than that. But I think it's important to like create the conditions as a culture to celebrate that and showcase that, it's an acceptable part of your role and your job and the brand and the culture to hopefully encourage people to take those bigger swings and take those risks.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's such a fun way to draw attention to failure is not only okay, it's expected, and we're going to give an award for it.
Yeah, for sure. Not only that, but you also get coupons. Coupons for kick-out coupons. So you can kick anybody out of a conference room at any time, 20 times a year. So if you need a conference room, just kick them out.
I wish we just had a knock at the door.
I wish. I really do. I've been waiting for that moment. No one's used one on me, which is disappointing.
Sean got it last year, so it would be Sean. Like, Sean, man, we're on the same team. We're recording a podcast episode.
True. I wish. That'd be great.
All right, last question. What are you most proud of at your time here at goodr?
Yeah, I think kind of drafting off the Pitch-a-Palooza, and this may be like a little cliche and cheesy, but I think creating the processes and the conditions for people to really enjoy what they do, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think Pitch-a-Palooza is an opportunity like that, but from a creative standpoint, like giving people the space and autonomy to execute and create something that they find hilarious and absurd, and just giving people the opportunity to do that, because I firmly do believe, like, if you're in a meeting and you're brainstorming and you find something so hilarious and everyone's laughing, like those are the moments you should be executing on. And I think for me personally, I'm working on it more now, but allowing the space and creating the space for those things to be executed. Because at the end of the day, if you're not executing on those things that you find hilarious, then, what are you doing?
What's the point?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Couldn't agree more. You want to say go Gophers to get us out of here?
Oh, go Gophers. Sky Umau, row the boat. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Goodr podcast. To submit questions for the podcast, learn more about our culture, and learn how you can status the quote challenge, head over to goodr.com/culture. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening, including on YouTube, where you can now watch all of our new episodes. Who knows? You might even catch a glimpse of Carl at our headquarters if he's not already passed out at the tiki bar from all the margaritas.